More success made easy. Solving problems one step at a time. I thought you'd like the title to that.
Give your example about the elephant.
I'll do that in a
How
minute.
do you?
Welcome, everyone, to Conversations with Dad. This is episode 8, Success Made Easy. I kind of got the title idea from you, Dad, because you'd always like naming your books, Opera Made Easy and Camping Made Easy, and you always really liked the Made Easy things. So I sort of named this series of videos kind of in tribute to that. So tonight we're talking about solving problems one step at a time, or as my friend Michael would once say, how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. And the basic idea is so in physics, when you're solving a really complicated problem, you break everything down to its component chunks, and then you solve each component chunk, each of the little chunks individually, and it's easier. But then also in life, you would teach me something similar growing up as well. To take a complicated problem and then solve each of the little pieces, break it into pieces, and this seems to be a pretty common trend among among problem solvers is to turn a big complicated problem into a whole series of simple problems that you can take care of individually. So, do you want to get started? Or do you want me to get started on this?
Go ahead.
Okay. So, um, a lot of times, my thoughts are this: a lot of times in life, we are hit with a bad situation or something that we're trying to get out of. Either you're in a lot of debt, or you have a crappy job, or you're not happy with your life, or you're trying to achieve something, or there's some, big mess in your life you're trying to deal with. And and if you look at the problem as a whole, it's too overwhelming. I mean, it's good to sit back and kind of get a grasp of the big overview of the problem and say, this is a big thing I got to deal with. But that's that's too big, that's too big of a problem most of the time for anyone to solve. And so what I've always tried to do ever since I was a kid, and then especially after studying physics in college, was to oh, my camera's a little bit blurry there. It's not focusing right. There it goes. So, what I've been trying to do is to take these big problems and break them down into component chunks and handle these chunks one step at a time. It's like all these financial managers telling you how do you get out of debt. You just pay off one credit card at a time. Things like that. Uh, and what I find in life is if you subdivide the project or the big problem that you're trying to solve into little chunks, it doesn't really matter which chunk you solve at any given time. You just work your way through them in whatever's convenient, and you can then still subdivide problems into even smaller chunks. So, like there's a server that I'm working on. It's being naughty, and I'm having to go rebuild the whole thing. And I'm just kind of working my way through it. And I don't really have the time to just do it all in one night. So one night I'll switch out some parts, and then another night I'll go and make sure it's posting properly, and then another night I'll go reload the operating system, and then I'll transfer some data. I'm just going to break it down into chunks, and I'll just do it a little bit, one step at a time, in my spare time because
For
it's not
people
super
for people
important.
who don't know, you have a computer business, by the way.
Yeah, among all the other crazy stuff that I do. So that just happens to be what I'm working on tonight. Or with I was building a deck in my backyard over the summer because I wanted to be able to barbecue even in the rain, and I don't have a week to just power through and build the deck, or even a few days. I'd do it a little bit here, a little bit there, and I just break it up into pieces. Today I'll put up some poles, and I'll put up a couple of the boards and things like that, and just eventually everything comes together. And and
As a parent, it's gratifying to see your kids. I have my two sons and four grandchildren, and it's gratifying to see them kind of learn to deal with life in an efficient fashion.
Yeah, well, I think breaking things up is efficient. I mean, some people try to just power through and get it all done at once, and then they burn themselves out. And I think the trick in life is to pace yourself and keep up that momentum. You know, you have to have that consistency of doing, like I said in the last video, do something productive every day. And this applies to problem solving as well. Or let me give you a good example. So when with my computer store, uh, we had to really restructure things because of the virus, and really change the way that we were doing stuff. And it seemed like a monumental problem. And so what I did was I took the store, and I broke it down into the different aspects of what we needed to solve. And I prioritized them. The first thing was safety, right? How do we operate safely? And I talked to my doctor, talked to Dr. Mazetas, and I said, hey, you know, you're sort of ahead of the curve on this thing. It hasn't hit Oklahoma yet, but how do we prepare, right? And so we implemented social distancing policies, and we implemented we set up a check-in counter at the front of the store. Somebody could walk in, drop off their computer, check in, and we never had to get close to them. They never had to get close to us. We never had to get close to each other. Things like that. And we'd start, kind of implementing a series of policies to make it safer to operate the business. Everybody could work from home, was working from home, and then anybody who did work in the business, we then separated out. If I'm there, I'll be in the very back, away from everybody else. Mike is going to be on one side, and Pip's going to be in his office, and Long's going to be in his office, and Chris is up front, and nobody's remotely close to anybody, and we're all in our own individual, rooms, and so we're all kind of isolated. But we didn't do all this at once. We did this step by step over the course of a few weeks, and getting ahead of the potential situation. And then we were like, well, okay, what kind of stuff are people going to need? We're going to have supply problems probably, and so we started pre-ordering parts that we were going to need, and things that we thought might be in short supply. We started pre-ordering a bunch of laptops, and we just started breaking it down into the little pieces, then solving each of these problems at a time. And then by the time things got bad in Oklahoma, I mean they never got too bad, but by the time it hit Oklahoma, we were already prepared because we planned in advance. But more importantly, we solved each of the little problems that we were going to run into, and were able to mitigate the situation. And so whenever you're dealing with any complicated problem in life, that's the approach that I take. Whether it's getting out of debt, or uh, hell, getting a girl. You gotta be successful. You gotta go get yourself in shape. You've gotta learn how to be nice to people. I mean, there's a whole series of things that you need to do just to be, to find somebody, or learning how to. Lately, I've been learning how to do sales, right? Lately, as in over the last, 3, 4 years, because I'm not very good at sales, and so learning from Uncle Jim,
You
how
think
to.
you think you're not good at sales, but you seem to me like you're doing all right.
Well, yeah, but compared to like Uncle Jim, I'm not that great. I'm getting better. I'm getting, but how do you socialize? How do you simplify down the information to present to the customer? How do you talk past the sale? Just all these little things, and you're not going to do it all at once. You just have to work on one thing at a time and slowly get better at it. And that's really the key, I think, to any sort of problem solving is just tackle it in chunks. And then also knowing what's important and what's not really important, because there's a lot of the details you don't have to worry about. With the guys at work, a lot of times, once I solve the major stuff, then I tell them, okay, work out the details, because it doesn't really matter if they do it this way or that way, as long as it gets done. Uh, it's all good. But that's sort of my thought on problem solving, and I think it applies to a lot of aspects in life as well. Just like you're getting your nutrition and fitness and stuff that you talk about a lot. Um, you've been trying for a couple of years to get me onto a ketogenic diet, and
And you're getting there.
I'm getting there, right? Well, I've always liked meat and I've always liked vegetables. It's kind of nice that I can eat butter again. Uh, but what I started doing is I started just cutting out one step at a time. Okay, I'm not gonna have a perfect diet to begin with, but I'll cut out the sodas. That was easy. I cut that out a long time ago because I didn't, because I like having teeth. And I'll cut out sugary drinks. Like orange juice and apple juice and stuff like that. I really like orange juice, but and then you cut out pasta and you cut out, you just start cutting out the bad things one step at a time every time you identify something bad. Or when you're trying to, another good example is if you're trying to sort through a bunch of stuff. When when mom died.
We all have clutter we're trying to go through, and
Oh
it
yeah,
just
yeah,
you
yeah.
can't do it all at once.
And well, and I had a mountain of clutter because when mom died, we had all the stuff from the storage lockers get dropped off at my place, and I didn't have room for it all. And I filled up my shed, my which later became my workshop, but I didn't have room for everything, and it's just a mountain of stuff to deal with, and so I would just break it down. Okay, I'm gonna go through one box at a time, and just consistently go through the stuff and just start sorting. This is the stuff we're keeping. This is stuff we're tossing. And as long as you develop a system, a consistent system, that seems to make the difference. So,
Well, good. I think you pretty well covered the topic. Any other aspects?
um, I'm trying to think of a good example that would apply to most people. Really, what it comes to, I'm gonna kind of change direction to starting a business because what I really want to do with this channel is I want to start helping people start up their own side projects and stuff. So when you're starting a business, which is which can be difficult if you haven't done it before, and everybody is I think everybody ought to have at least a side business. There's some tax benefits to it. It gives you some independence, a little bit of extra money if you do it right. And so, when you start a side business, you've got a whole bunch of hurdles you have to overcome. What are you going to do? And what I always think of is, okay, first thing I'm going to need a little bit of space to handle the business. So let's allocate some space. Let's allocate some money, some resources. What resources do I have? Let's allocate a little bit of time because those are your big three things: space, resources, and time. And if you want to start a business, you got to figure out what is it that I'm good at that other people be willing to pay me for? What can I do that,
Hmm.
whether it's selling something online or mowing people's lawns, grabbing your buddy in a pickup truck and doing two guys in a truck kind of work. And if you break it down into the chunks, don't worry about, you don't have to have it all put together at once. If you're some big, big billionaire, big millionaire with all the resources, you're just going to throw some big idea together. Sure, and you already have the people and whatnot. But if you're just a guy working a crappy job, uh, trying to make a little bit of money on the side, you're going to
And
have
the
to.
side job could evolve into a significant business for
Right.
you.
Well, that's how my computer store got started. It was a side job in college originally. So, you how do you in my case, getting the I wanted to have some side income. So I set up my dining room at my apartment in college. I actually had a really nice apartment in college. It was a 3-bedroom apartment that I got for cheap. This is after I moved out of Dr. Ritchie's house. This is a little bit later on. So I had this big apartment that was cheap because the apartment wasn't renovated. It was kind of lower end, but it was in a nice apartment complex. But the landlord basically got stuck with this thing, and they said, "Hey, look, rent it to me cheap, and I'll take it as is, and that's fine." And so I converted one of the rooms into, I had a couple of roommates to help me pay the bills, and then I had converted the dining room and then eventually the living room. But I had the dining room set up as my workspace, so I had the space, and then after school, I think I'm gonna sneeze here. Excuse me. Uh, uh, Excuse me. Something got in my nose, I think. Anyway, so after I was done with school and after I was done studying, I'd go get a little bit of work done. An hour, 2 hours every night, just getting a few projects done or learning, and until I got kind of that groove going. And then I had to solve we started passing out some flyers. Got my buddies who owed me favors to help me pass out flyers, and just little things, just step by step, to get it in shape. And if you've already got an income from a job, even if it's barely paying the bills, as long as you have a little bit of extra time. I only had $500 to start the business on. That was enough to buy some flyers and some tools and kind of get things going. If you break it down into these little chunks and solve each chunk, and don't worry, you want to keep a general eye on the big picture, but don't worry about it too much. Just like I said in the other video, keep moving forward. And in this one, we're doing it in little chunks. You're going to make progress towards it, and then eventually the business came together over time. Or if you've got a problem, usually a big problem is just a little, bunch of little things. We're bleeding money. Where are we having trouble? Well, this guy's not working very efficiently. Let's fix his efficiency. Let's fix that other efficiency, and you just keep tinkering things one step at a time, and it slowly gets better. And so that's sort of my problem solving philosophy. And this way I don't need to be super smart about it. I don't need to really think in great detail. I just identify little parts of the problem that I can solve and handle, and I take care of it. So,
What's interesting is on both sides of your family, you come from kind of an entrepreneur background. Um, your grandfather on your mother's side, had some side ventures. He worked, at least as a part-time job selling cars. I think Lincoln Mercury's in Tulsa, but he had side businesses. He had a restaurant. He had some various entrepreneurial things going. On my side, the grandfather on the other side had some farming background, various things he was doing, had worked a regular job. But not everybody has an entrepreneurial background that has a sense or an example of how to do these things. Of course, that's part of the purpose of these videos.
yeah, well, having an entrepreneurial background certainly helps, and it helped me avoid a lot of mistakes. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out a way that I can break down the really key points that help me achieve my independence and figure out how I can do that for other people too. And so yeah, this philosophy of doing things, just doing one step at a time. I've got an intern who's been trying to get his life together for a while. He had a difficult situation that he's largely overcome. And a long time ago, when he first started interning with me, getting him down this path of doing, just solving your problems one step at a time. Don't try and solve everything at once. Don't come up with some big grandiose plan. Just handle it in little bite-sized chunks and keep moving forward, and you'll eventually get there, or you'll at least start getting rid of enough of the bullshit in your life that you can start seeing more clearly. And
Now, one side thought is you need to get your sleep, your nutrition, you need your exercise. When an airplane takes off from the airport, they push all the throttles all the way forward. The engines are full force taking off. But after a few minutes and you've got some altitude, you want to ease back the engines. And so many people burn themselves out. They're going 100% on and on and on and on and on. And you've got to give yourself some breathing room. And other elements are important to life: nutrition, sleep, exercise, and so forth. Stress relief.
yeah, no, that's true, and I'm a big fan of pacing myself. Um, so yeah, if you're starting from nothing, you do have to hit the gas and really just go for it. But I'm taking the perspective of if you have a job, even if you have a crappy job, and you're mostly paying your bills, you'll be able to. Uh, I'm mostly trying to focus on helping people use their spare time to start something fresh. But another good example of how you could get started whenever you're getting any sort of business started, you want to evaluate what resources you have, and can you, uh, frankly, how can you save money? So, for example, I was starting a business in Tulsa once, and it didn't work out so well. It's not that the business wasn't going to be successful, but I was spreading my resources too thin. But that's aside the point. Uh, so I was starting this business in Tulsa, and I was starting it out of
This is while living in a suburb of Oklahoma City. So Tulsa was what, about an hour and a half, 2 hour
yeah, about
drive
an hour and a
away.
half away. Yeah, but I had my grandmother's house there, that so I could stay over at my grandmother's house, and I had a little a bedroom set aside for me, and so I was using that bedroom to start up my business in. And so being able to, if you're down on your luck, if you can stay with family and live for free or live for practically for free and start something up that way, that takes a huge burden, because what sinks most people is that their expenses are so high that they're spending all their time working a 9 to 5 job just to pay their bills, and then they're too tired afterwards. Or a lot of times people have to work 2 or 3 jobs nowadays, and that's just not viable. That's not sustainable. And so if you're in that kind of situation, the first set of problems you have to solve is how do you reduce your expenses to where you have the time to where you can even start up your own project. And so, uh, you know, there's easy things like don't eat out, don't drink, don't smoke, stuff that just wastes money. But then there's also harder decisions like, maybe move back in with your parents or move in with a relative, stay with get a roommate. Or I know this one person who would rent a room from a family, rent a spare room. That way, for a couple $100 a month, they had a place to live. That was, on the cheap. So, you want to reduce your expenses down to where your day job can pay your bills, so that you then have the free time to expand. And that's really the first step in starting a business. In fact, I really need to do kind of a step-by-step guide to starting a business for people.
What we might point out to anybody watching this is you and I, had habitually talked by telephone every night, series of sometimes several phone calls, and we decided these YouTube videos were kind of fun, and while we're doing it, might as well just get them out to other people. This is
Yeah,
not monetized, and this is just kind of fun between father and son.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you're kind of stuck in New York, and there's not a lot going on right now, and you can't really go out and do anything. And yeah, I don't think I'm ever.
Running around with a mask on isn't much fun.
Yeah, especially when it's freezing outside. Uh, so yeah, so what I'm hoping to do is, if I can kind of convey how I achieve my independence, uh, and it's definitely an uphill climb.
And
If
you're
I
still living very modestly.
Yeah, but I don't need stuff. One of the biggest secrets to my success is I don't really care that much about stuff. I'm happy driving an older car. I've got, I mean, I had to buy a relatively new car, a few years ago, because I had some car problems. But I don't mind driving an older car. I don't need fancy stuff. Um, and I don't need a lot of I don't live an expensive lifestyle, because luxuries don't interest me that much, and that's freed up a lot of resources and saved me a lot of time that I can put towards projects. I like accomplishments a lot more than I like stuff. And so, certainly solving your mindset problem, a lot of people, frankly, need to start eliminating bad habits probably before they can do anything. That's a really You gave me a really good idea. Probably the biggest thing that people need to do, the first step that people need to do if they want to get their life together and become independently successful. And like I said, what I mean by successful is you're in control of your life. You get to decide your responsibilities. You get to decide what you're going to do. The first step is to start eliminating all the bad habits that you have. I mean, I like some of my bad habits, but they don't cost a lot of money.
Everybody
I
does.
like screwing with people. But other than that, um, the
What's an example of doing this
oh
to
screw.
people?
Well, so like I've been doing some like on Mech, where I'll play some video games with people, with friends, and I've got I've got a buddy of mine who takes the game probably a little bit more seriously than he ought to. So I'll always build a ridiculous mech just to piss him off while we're playing. And I've recorded some of these videos where I'll just do some sort of ridiculous mech build, and I'll just be all stupid on the internet, just messing with people, because it's funny, and I'm a terrible person when it comes to video games. But fortunately, that vice doesn't cost me hardly any money, so it doesn't really. So, but the big thing I think is just eliminating these bad habits. Fortunately, I didn't have too many bad habits to begin with. But I had a buddy of mine in college who would drink and smoke a whole lot, and he was spending probably $3,000 or $4,000 a year, maybe more than that, on alcohol and cigarettes. And I sat down, and he was always having money problems. I sat down and said, "Hey, dude, how much are you spending? You're buying a pack of cigarettes, 2 packs of cigarettes every day, so that's $10 a day. So that right there is $3,000. And then you're drinking a 6 pack of beer, and that's going to be another $1,500 a year. And when it's all said and done, he's probably spending $5,000 a year on bad habits. Maybe beer costs more than that. I don't know. I'm allergic to beer, so I don't drink beer. But once he realized that he was spending four, five, $6,000 a year on his vices, he cut back pretty quick, and that solved a lot of his money problems. So before you jump into a venture, you want to make sure you build the proper foundation, and so
Well,
uh,
it helps to know something about what you're doing. That thankfully, in
it
your uh, college background, your schooling background, before then, you were early to get into computers. A lot of people didn't have the computer skills, and that evolved
it
into a good business for you.
it sort of helps to know what you're doing, but not as much as you think actually. So the I'm don't get me wrong, I'm good at computers, but I'm not that good. All the guys that work for me are generally a lot of them are generally better than me. The my I'm a garbage programmer, so I hired a programmer. I'm not very good at fixing Macs, and so I hired an Apple guy. You can hire people for skills, but the big thing that you have to know is you got to know how to manage your money. You've got to know how to manage your time, and before you can start a business, you have to set kind of the foundation that you're going to build on. Do you have a place to run your business? Doesn't have to necessarily be a storefront, but you need some space. And you want dedicated space because that's going to help with your taxes because you want to be able to write off stuff that's actually, focused on your business. But you also want to segregate it because a lot of people will try and work out of the same place that they do all their normal stuff, and then they constantly get distracted by kids or by TV or by whatever it is. So having, even if it's in your house, just having a separate, my workshop is built behind my house, and it's a separate building, and I don't have to get wet outside to go from one to the other, but it's a separate physical space, and everything inside this workshop, whether it's my studio or whatever, is work related. And so you want to have a dedicated space for work. You need to make sure you've got enough money to do whatever you're going to do. People will often try and launch a business without having the resources to even have a chance at being successful, and that's why so many fail. So you've got to solve that problem. You need to solve the problem of what are you going to do, and do you have the people to do it? If it's a skill that you have, great, and if it's a skill that you don't have, you can hire people, but that just takes more money. But you've got to work through a whole series of little problems, but you want to break them down and do them individually, because if you try to do it all at once, it's going to be overwhelming. And being good at prioritizing helps too. But on the flip side of solving problems one step at a time, there's something that I heard it in two different places. My chess teacher, Mr. Yovanovitch, back when I was in middle school, and then also that lawyer friend of yours, Mark Smith, said this too. And they both basically said something along the lines of, you can afford to make little mistakes as long as you don't make the big mistake. Don't avoid the big blunder, the catastrophic blunder. And in chess they'll call it like a catastrophic blunder, where you make a mistake that you can never recover from. And in law, I would imagine if you do something bad that you can't get out of, then you're screwed that way. So you certainly want to
A
avoid.
bad contract or something like that.
Right.
You know, like contracting for too much space or space that's too expensive.
Right. So you certainly need to avoid making big mistakes. And so part of it also, when it comes to solving problems one step at a time, it would also be eliminating mistakes one mistake at a time. Mitigating them, getting out of these bad situations. If you've got a bad employee, you've got to find a way to get rid of them before they take your business down. Um, or if you have, I was talking to a friend of mine last night on the phone who does a bunch of management stuff and PR stuff, and she was talking about a bad employee that she had to deal with, where they went into the business with the intention of eventually suing the business. Where this person was always taking notes and gathering information, try to set up a situation for so that they could so they could then sue the business for a lot of money, and eventually that happened. It was kind of a disaster waiting to happen. And so, identify if you're a big company, then that's sort of baked into the cake, and you've got the resources to deal with it. But if you're a small business, that'll just kill you. That'll kill your business. Um, and so the even when it comes to like toxic friends, everybody has, that one friend that's just a real pain in the ass, and you love them anyway. But for the
Well, they
most
start out maybe not toxic, and then you discover their toxic qualities.
Yeah, that too. But so there's a lot of people in college that I liked hanging out with in college, but they started going down paths that were not conducive to my sanity, and so I had to start, dropping some of these people by the wayside, because you only have so much time and effort that you can put towards things. And so, uh, you
Well,
know,
friendship should be mutually beneficial, where you're both adding to each other, and the combination of the two of you is better than each of you separately. But
oh
some
yeah,
people
yeah.
end up sucking more out of you than you can stand.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. But I think that instead of doing these big purges, right? I know some people will just purge their friends just in mass, and that seems like a little bit overkill. Uh, I had a friend of mine who would basically say, relationships are kind of like investing. If the investment if the relationship's paying off, you invest more time into it, and if the relationship's not paying off, you start divesting from it until you don't really deal with that person very much. And that seemed like a very practical approach towards dealing with people. The people who are being good to you and you're being good to them, focus more on them, and the people who are not, just start spending less and less time with them and putting some distance and let them fall by the wayside. And this once again falls into that philosophy of just one step at a time. Lots of little numbers add up to a big number, and all these little things turn into a successful life. And it's been a long journey for me, but
You
I
just
think
reminded
that's.
me of something. Your grandfather on your mother's side, back when people, when coins would actually buy something, you used to be able to buy something for a nickel or a dime or a quarter. And your grandfather Nick's comment was, as a businessman, three fast nickels are better than one slow dime.
Yeah.
So maybe cutting your margins a little bit and giving a customer a good price, you could do three transactions and make a little bit of money, and it was better than trying for one big score, one big profit. So three fast nickels are better than one slow dime.
I sort of agree with that, and I sort of don't. I think it's situational. So like, there was I'm trying to think how I want to describe this. I think that in any given business, there's a there's a certain math to it. So like, there's a uh, there's a type of service that we do where it's like a full hand holding for your business, where we'll take care of all your IT support as much as you need. We'll manage your data, your emails, your website. We'll just do the whole thing. If it has anything to do with technology, we'll take care of it for you, right? And those are immensely difficult for us to do because it takes a lot of time and a lot of customer interaction. So we only do them for people that we really, really like. And those are the kinds of things that we'd have to charge top dollar for, because if we tried to get a whole bunch of those on the cheap, we'd run ourselves ragged. On the other hand, um, when it comes to some of the repair services at the business, a lot of times just helping somebody quick and getting, if even if it's a small project, we can just get them taken care of real quick. We don't charge them a lot of money. We get them out the door. That's a quick way to make some easy money, and it doesn't involve a long-term commitment. So what I would say to Papu Nick's statement is that if you're avoiding a long-term business commitment, then yes, three quick nickels is better than one slow dime. But if you're going to be engaged in a contractual situation for a long-term engagement, uh, you want to make really damn certain that it's going to be worth it. And if you even hesitate a little bit, maybe then maybe you don't want to do it, because you don't want to be locked into a multi-year contract for pennies on the dollar if it's going to be a big time sink for you. And
That's a
and
good way of breaking it down. You got different categories in
yeah.
business, and you price accordingly.
Now in Papu's case, he was running a restaurant. He was selling cars. He was doing things that would be a one and done kind of deal, and so his philosophy worked great for what he was doing. And with some of the, especially with like some of the software stuff that we're doing, that I do with my software business. If you're in a contract with somebody where you're going to be doing a lot of customized work for them, and they have really high expectations, and they're going to be a real pain in the butt, then it's almost not worth it, because you can't charge enough money to make it worth your time if you're going to be sinking all your time into it. So I think it's you have to balance your own personal time investment as well, because you only have so much time. But certainly with sales, that would hold true, I think.
Hmm.
So, do you have any other thoughts that you want to share
I
before
think
we
we've
wrap
pretty
up?
well covered it. I think we're good.
Okay, so the big takeaway from this one, everyone, is don't worry if you have a big, complicated mess to sort out. Just break it down into chunks and take care of it one step at a time, and that'll get you out of that mess eventually. Or if you're trying to start up a new business or start up a new project, solve a problem, just do it one step at a time. A great example. I have these ballistic vests that I made, and they're just amazing. They will withstand an insane amount of damage. And the story behind
100% made in the U.S.
that's right. Yes, they're all made in the U.S., mostly here in Oklahoma. And how I actually stumbled across it accidentally. I was trying to do something else, uh, and I uh, and I generated a really interesting result where I ended up building this composite material that withstood an insane amount of damage. But since I wasn't meaning to do it, I hadn't taken any notes on how I did. It's just something that I had thrown together out of some materials in my attic. I was making a concealable vest for my buddy in New York, and as just sort of a prototype. And I accidentally made something amazing, and I had no idea how I did it. And so I ended up spending the next year trying to figure out how the hell I did this thing, because the first time was amazing, and then I couldn't replicate it. And I had to go down and just start eliminating variables and just work my way through the problem step by step by step by step. And it took an insane amount of time to do, but I eventually, worked
And
my
now
way
you've got
through
it
it.
mastered, and people
Right,
would have
and now
trouble
and now
reverse
and now right,
engineering
and,
it.
and now it's fantastic, and it's a real pain in the butt to make, because in order to make it work with such slight and nuanced differences, the temperature and the humidity and all these different environmental conditions on how you're making the composite, and just all kinds of stuff went into it. But it was a monumental problem, and I solved it by just breaking it down to its little steps and just eliminating the variables and working my way through it until I was able to replicate it 100% of the time. And so if you're trying, excuse me, and so if you're trying to develop something, give me just a, so if you're trying to develop something or do some major project, you've got to break it down into the steps because you're not going to solve you're not going to solve something big all at once. We're just not, we're just not built that way. So
Well,
take
better than a copyright or a patent or whatever on this. You've got a process that anybody else would have a terrible time trying to reverse engineer it and figure out what you've got.
yeah, it's sort
And
of
you
a
come up with something pretty magical.
yeah, it's sort of a bitch. Um, so anyway, yeah, so that's the whole key to life. Like I said, but the big key to my success uh, in the previous video, just keep taking steps forward. Always do something productive every day. And the counterpart in this video is just handle things one step at a time, break it down and break your problems down to their chunks and just deal with them one at a time. Don't stress yourself out over it. You'll eventually get there. Just have the faith that you can do it and the conviction to keep on doing it till it's done and you will get there. So,
Sounds good.
all right, so if you like this kind of stuff, please subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, like the video, add a comment down below, be part of the conversation. You can check out bobtheorc.com where I'll be posting some stuff. And this is sort of my hobby, and I hope you guys like it. And we'll do some more. We'll have some more conversations. Thank you very much, and good night.